before I tell you in what year and in what country today's case took place, I would like to introduce you to the sponsor of this video, Lots of Slots. If you haven't heard of Lots of Slots, it's a free-to-play, authentic casino mobile slot game that you can play anytime and anywhere. And if you scan the QR code here or click the link below, you can claim 20 million free coins and an extra 100 million coins as a briefcase special bonus. What I really like about Lots of Slots is that there are tons of slots to choose from and extremely high jackpot odds, which means that you could get a big payout in just a few spins. There are lots of cool mini-games. Personally, I like Oyster Bonus, an exciting pick-style game that gives great rewards. I've always enjoyed playing as a quick break from researching my cases, and my favourite slot is Wild Piñata, as not only is it lots of fun, you can really get lucky with the bonuses. I once even managed to get a big jackpot of over 300 billion. Right now, a St. Patrick's Carnival event is going on, with special gameplays like the Lucky Clover slots and Paddy's Gifts, a stacking game, and gives awesome rewards. If you want to enjoy this same thrill experience the casino slots offer, then trust me, Lots of Slots is for you. And remember, it's a free game, and you will get a 20 million welcome bonus and a 100 million briefcase special bonus. So make sure to use the link in the description box or in the pinned comment or scan the QR code on screen to download Lots of Slots. Now let's go to mid-20th century Puerto Rico. In the quiet neighbourhood of Mochuelo, nestled just a stone's throw away from the lively streets of Ponce City, in the small island of Puerto Rico, Antonio Correa Cotto was born in June 1918. Mochuelo, with its cosy wooden homes, painted in cheerful colours, stood as a testament to humble living, while Ponce, the island's bustling hub, beckoned with its stately buildings, elegant thoroughfares, and a hint of sophistication. In the tranquil countryside that surrounded the city, the scent of tobacco and coffee lingered in the air, and this is where Antonio's family carved out their existence. His parents, Raimundo Correa Martinez and Angela Cotto Garcia, worked tirelessly to provide for their 9 children. They were faced by the challenges of modest means and a scarcity of opportunity in the area. Growing up amid the warmth of family and the simple joys of everyday life, Antonio could not help but feel a stirring of curiosity as he observed the comings and goings of the city's more affluent residents. Walking the streets of Ponce, he marvelled at the elegance of its parks and the easy grace of its inhabitants, harbouring a quiet longing to one day explore the world beyond Mochuelo and perhaps find a place among those he admired from afar. In Puerto Rico, education had been made compulsory and free since 1900, and by the time Antonio attended school, the bilingual system, teaching in both English and Spanish, had been in place for about 2 decades. However, Antonio's educational journey took a different path. He left school at a very young age, barely learning the basics of reading and mathematics, as his restless nature often disrupted the classroom. Recognizing his struggles, his parents arranged for him to work as an apprentice for a local carpenter. The income he brought home from work helped support the large family, alleviating some of their financial burdens. As Antonio matured, he found himself taking on additional work, including labouring in the sugarcane fields. However, as he grew into a young adult, he yearned for more. His life was just working and giving most of his income to his parents, but he realised that his earnings were not sufficient to satisfy his ambitions. Faced with financial strain and a desire for more, he resorted to desperate measures. He turned to theft and began engaging in acts of violence, instilling fear in the streets of Ponce. The pursuit of quick money led him down a dangerous path, one that would alter the course of his life and the lives of those around him. Antonio Correa Cotto's name started to become synonymous with criminal activity, and his notoriety spread. His journey into the criminal underworld began with a mere brush with the law, a minor offence that resulted in a 2-month prison sentence and a $15 fine. But this was only the beginning. By September of 1942, his actions had escalated, culminating in a brutal assault that left someone severely injured. Yet at the time, no charges were pressed. It wasn't until October of 1943 that the law caught up with him, and he spent a month in prison. Despite these setbacks, Antonio remained undeterred, and with each incident with the police, his confidence grew. Crime became more than a means to an end for him. It became a way of life. Despite his criminal deeds, he always looked his best. When seen in the neighbourhood, a well-dressed, handsome young man with a distinctive scar etched into his face. Tattoos adorned his chest and arms, and for some this added to his appeal. His physical presence, coupled with a certain air of charisma, made him seem attractive to many women in the community. As Puerto Rico embraced the American way of life, so too did its youth, idolising figures like Al Capone and Hollywood stars. In Antonio Correa Cotto, they found their homegrown gangster, a symbol of rebellion against the constraints of society. In the streets of Ponce, people would speak of him in a hushed tone, weaving tales of his daring escapades and formidable presence. His name was spoken with a mix of fear and fascination. Antonio had courted many beautiful women, but eventually he met a lady named Rosa Maria, a charming widow who was known for her warmth and kindness. He asked her to come and live with him, and then on the 2nd of September 1947, amidst whispers from the locals of admiration and, of course, some scepticism, they married. Despite Antonio's apparent happiness, there was still a darkness that simmered within him. In the late evening of the 25th of January 1950, he ventured into the heart of Machuelo, a modest neighbourhood, nestled in the Villa Olga sector of the town. Here he entered the home of a 69-year-old man. He then stabbed him, before turning his attention to the man's terrified wife. Following this, he attacked the 3 other people living in the house. The police were called, and when they arrived they were met with a scene of devastation and bloodshed. 2 people were dead, and 3 were injured, and their bodies lay strewn across the floor, each one the result of Antonio's callous rampage. Unfazed by the arrival of the authorities, he brandished a gun, and without hesitation, fired at the officers in a desperate bid to evade justice. 1 officer was badly wounded. Following this tragedy, there was a glimmer of relief for the community. Antonio Correa Cotto was finally apprehended. This arrest marked a temporary halt to his reign of terror, instilling a sense of safety amongst the people. With his freedom abruptly curtailed, he was sent to prison before going to trial to face the consequences of his actions. The news of his arrest swiftly swept across the whole country. It even reached places such as the Dominican Republic, Haiti and Cuba. The story dominated the headlines of newspapers such as El Imparcial, El Mundo and El Dia, but this only ensured that Antonio's name became the main topic of conversation across the island. At his trial, he stood before judges Pedro Muniz and Lorenzo Lagrada. The verdict was assured before the trial even started, and it did not take long for him to be found guilty and given the punishment of 2 life sentences to be served in the state penitentiary. At 32 years old, Antonio's name resonated across the island, infamous for his divergent lifestyle. On one side, he was recognised as a devout Catholic, frequently seeking solace in confession, but everyone knew he also engaged in illicit activities, finding pride and status within the world of crime. Despite his incarceration, he showed no remorse. Instead, he made threats against those responsible for arresting him and putting him in prison, especially targeting judges Pedro Muniz and Lorenzo Lagrada. His lack of regret was chilling, serving as a stark reminder of exactly the type of man he was. However, things changed on the 28th of October 1950, a mere 7 months after his arrest, when a daring escape unfolded at the penitentiary. It was unknown if Antonio was involved in orchestrating this audacious act, as a small group of inmates crafted strategies designed to plunge the prison into a state of chaos that would leave the guards struggling to regain control. With much precision, they executed their scheme by inciting a riot that quickly escalated into a full-blown uprising. They seized control of the armory and equipped themselves with weapons, transforming the prison into a tense and heavily armed environment. In the chaos, 2 brave prison guards tragically lost their lives, while many others sustained injuries in the violent conflict that ensued. As the dust settled, The aftermath revealed the staggering extent of what had happened. 68 of the 111 inmates that were kept under guard in the prison had escaped. Among those were some of the most notorious and dangerous prisoners in the country, including the infamous Antonio Correa Cotto. The prison break sent shockwaves through the prison service and the police department, plunging them both into a state of disarray. The fact that criminals were walking the streets heightened concerns for public safety, but it was Antonio who stood out as one of the most perilous. Aware that they needed to catch him quickly, authorities launched an unprecedented manhunt which spanned the entire island. The magnitude of the situation reverberated across the country, leaving some people gripped with both anxiety and horror, particularly regarding the safety of their loved ones. Fearing the worst, there were those who armed themselves, fearing possible encounters with violent criminals. Taking charge of the operation was Police Chief Salvador Roig, who issued strict directives to everyone living in Puerto Rico, especially to those who lived in densely populated metropolitan areas. He appealed to them to help apprehend the escaped prisoners by any means necessary, regardless of any consequences. The urgency of the situation was evident, as officers worked tirelessly to try and restore normality, easing the concerns of the public and reinstating stability to the country. 4 months later, Antonio had still not been caught, and on the 25th of February 1951, he surfaced in Ponce with chilling intent. He attacked and attempted to kill his own cousin, a man named Oscar Correa Cotto, and this was despite the vigilant watch of the police in the area. 2 days later, he attacked an elderly man and his wife, and then callously set their home on fire. The residents of the city were now extremely nervous and fearful as they faced the unsettling reality of such violence unfolding in front of them. Despite the community's collective trepidation, Antonio again managed to evade capture. Instead, he disappeared into the shadows, leaving behind a trail of devastation and anguish. The police circulated his description: about 5'5" tall, weighing about 135 pounds, slightly curly black hair, a moustache, with scars on his forehead, his eyebrow, and across his lips. When this description was also printed in the newspapers, they added that the wanted man had cold eyes. It wasn't until the early hours of the 10th of May 1952 that Antonio resurfaced, and again with vengeance. He unleashed another rampage of terror upon the Villa Olga neighbourhood. His heinous acts resulted in numerous casualties, including the tragic loss of Julia Maten and Senora Alvarado, both of who were pregnant. The grim aftermath of his actions had a profound effect on the community. Some children were left without parents, and people who had tried to approach him had been wounded. But now the community rallied together. Private donors and various associations, along with state departments, also now offered reward money as they recognised the severity of his crimes that had caused so much sorrow in the city. Under the direction of Justice Salvador Verey, the investigation intensified in its urgency to bring the perpetrator to justice. The impact of Antonio's reign of terror had reverberated far and wide, capturing the attention of journalists, and his story had now been written in many newspapers. Some joined in the efforts in offering substantial rewards for his capture, either dead or alive. While his notoriety was very well established in Ponce, his infamy had now spread throughout the island and beyond, plunging the residents into a state of heightened fear. The mere mention of his name struck panic into the hearts of many, surpassing even the apprehension caused by the mass escape on the 28th of October. 18 months had passed since then, and on the 30th of April 1952, rumours began to circulate, suggesting that sympathisers and acquaintances of Antonio were helping to facilitate his escape from Puerto Rico. These rumours gained traction in the press, further fueling the frenzy surrounding his elusive whereabouts. False leads were intentionally provided by his supporters, hindering the efforts of law enforcement. As this continued, the name Antonio Correa Cotto ascended into mythical status, simultaneously revered by some and reviled by others for his terrible deeds. Reports of sightings emerged from various corners of the island, while there was also speculation that he had fled to distant places, such as Chicago, New York, or even cities in Asia. In their quest for answers, the police detained over 70 individuals, including Antonio's friends and family members, who were all taken to the police station for questioning. But the papers continued to write about him. It was as if he had evolved into a living legend, casting a shadow of fear and uncertainty over the entire country, his presence looming large in the collective consciousness of the people. By now, frustration within the Puerto Rican police force reached its peak. Despite the island only being 100 miles long and 35 miles wide, the police's search had been hampered by the dense tropical undergrowth and the cane fields, which eventually prompted them to call for reinforcements from the United States. 4 police officers from Florida were sent to assist in the hunt, along with bloodhounds, who were renowned for their keen sense of smell and tracking abilities, were dispatched from Miami to San Juan, Puerto Rico's capital city, in order to aid in the search for the elusive fugitive. The bloodhounds were taken to track through areas where Antonio was believed to be hiding, in the vicinity of Ponce. By now, this unfolding drama had captured the attention of numerous newspapers, not only in Puerto Rico, but also newspapers from across the United States, including prominent publications such as the Miami Herald and the Tampa Tribune. Both wrote about the dramatic hunt for the island's most wanted criminal. Several days later, on the 16th of May 1952, a breakthrough occurred when authorities received a tip that Antonio had taken refuge on a farm in Hacienda Barrancas, located on the outskirts of Ponce. The police arrived there in force and called upon Antonio to surrender peacefully. However, true to his nature, he refused to yield without a fight, resorting to evasive tactics in a desperate bid to escape capture. Cornered within the labyrinth, which was a maze of sugarcane fields, he soon found himself engulfed by flames as the police set fire to the surrounding vegetation in a daring attempt to flush him out. Despite the inferno closing in around him, he emerged from the burning fields wielding a gun in one hand and a machete in the other, defiant to the end. In the face of imminent danger, Captain Luis Perez issued the order for his officers to open fire, and this act brought Puerto Rico's most wanted criminal's reign of terror to a violent end. Antonio Correa Cotto was dead. The manner in which he died was extensively documented by newspapers such as El Mundo and El Imparcial, with graphic accounts and vivid photographs capturing the intensity of the confrontation. But his infamy continued, and even the details of his burial, conducted at a civil ceremony in Ponce, were made public, allowing curious onlookers to bid farewell to the country's most well-known criminal in his final resting place. There were those who were disappointed that Antonio was not brought to justice through the judicial system, as many would have liked to have seen him tried for his crimes and to have spent the rest of his life in prison. In death, Antonio Correa Cotto achieved a macabre kind of celebrity, his notoriety enduring long after his demise. His life of crime served as an inspiration for Puerto Rico's salsa band, Ruby Haddock Orchestra's first hit, El Toro de Ponce, a catchy dance tune that told of his legacy in popular culture. Subsequently, his story has been adapted into multiple films, each offering a cinematic portrayal of his exploits. Decades later, a film by Braulio Lopez chronicled Antonio Correa Cotto's life and was showcased at the prestigious New York Film Festival, a testament to the enduring fascination with Puerto Rico's most infamous criminal. I would once again like to thank Lots of Slots for sponsoring today's video, and to download the game for free, use the QR code or go to the link in the description. As usual, please leave any comments or feedback you may have, and I hope to see you all again in the next brief case.